So, Rob, you were born in Boston and then you moved to Maryland. I mean, how did that all happen for you?
It happened when I was about 4 years old. My dad got a job down in Maryland. We thought it'd be just a little while, and it turned out to be his entire career.
What kind
So
of a, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of a job was it? Was it a government job or something?
he's a scientist. Yeah,
Scientist.
yeah,
Wow. And you were really young, so you pretty much grew up there.
yeah. Most of what I remember in Cambridge is like a sandbox and watching the trucks on Mass Avenue back then. But that's about it.
As far as Maryland goes, where you were living pretty close to DC.
Yeah, like a couple minute, 10-minute drive or so.
Cool. And how old were you when you started playing? Did you start playing at a young age?
I started playing, I started playing bass back in like 1979. So what I was, what, 16 years old, and I guess in that range. And then started writing songs. First songwriting partner was a guy named Brian Gay, who we went to school together. He became the first bass player in Government Issue, and at the same time he was doing that, we were also doing a band together. We were first called the Indians, and it was basically, we're still in high school. Mike Manos, who was in our art class, one day we heard he had
Marginal Man.
later Marginal Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Before that, several bands before that. But it turns out his brother had a drum kit. He never played it. So we got Mark Alberstadt, the original drummer from GIs, to show him some pointers. And Mike became our drummer. We had a female vocalist who went to our high school. We did a couple shows with her. Didn't really quite work out. And I remember this guy, a skateboard friend, this guy named Steve Polcari. So he said, "Hey, Steve, you want to sing?" And he jumped at it. And then we became Assault and Battery. So
You're like jumping so far ahead of me right now. I love because I have all this stuff that I was going to ask you about all of that, but that's okay. It's all right.
okay, sure.
So was anyone in your family like a musician, or did you just start playing because your friends were playing?
A little both. My mom played piano
Oh,
and
cool.
like that, but you know, not really a musician like as a professional musician. I know people whose parents or grandparents were professional musicians, and different story.
And then, like you mentioned, you met your first writing partner was Brian Gay, who was the original bass player of Government Issue. And then you guys had the band called the Indians with Mike Manos. I had all that written down before you said it. To talk about that early part for a minute, what was that like with your first band? What was that like with those guys?
Uh, it's, I mean, being in a band, it's, I mean, people talk about it being like you're in a gang, and it's like you
Right.
against the world, and it really feels that way. And your first band or your first few bands, it really, really feels like that. And especially when you're in high school, because you've got a bit more time to deal with stuff like that. And in terms of life experience and things like that, these are the guys, this is what you're doing. But we never expected to, make money at it, or, do any kind of, it was just something to do. It was fun.
Was Assault and Battery was it the same lineup as the Indians?
Except for the vocalist. When Sandra, our original singer, when we kind of parted ways with her, when we got Steve, we felt, okay, we need to change the name of the band as well.
Assault and Battery. You went from the
So,
Indians to Assault and Battery. Isn't it funny how you come up with these names when you're a kid?
well, the Indians was just completely, irony. It's like, here we are looking like, hardcore kids in 1980, and just have this name, the Indians, for no reason, just to mess with people.
It's
Uh,
really interesting to me that you were really involved in the scene, like right at the beginning. Um, and I read somewhere that Assault and Battery actually played a show with Minor Threat. That must have been pretty cool, huh?
oh yeah, I mean, it was a show that I put on. I arranged. It was at the Bethesda YMCA at what they called the Powwow House, which is like this little standalone building from the Y. It was like shaped in a circle, henceforth the Powwow House, and it was like a recreation center. And bands used to play there, mostly bands that did covers. Like they would play Ted Nugent and Rush and Leonard Skinner. So I contacted the woman who ran the thing and said, "Hey, I have a band and my friends have a band. Can we put on a show?" And she said, "Sure." So we played. SOA played.
Wow,
Uh,
really? So
oh
you
yeah,
had Rollins and Ian Mackay play with your band.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But back then he was Henry Garfield.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
so yeah, and then the Youth Brigade, the DC Youth Brigade,
Yes.
was playing when the show got shut down. They literally cut off the power, and they called the police, and they showed up with canine unit. It was really crazy. I was trying to, keep the thing going. I didn't know a lot of what was going on outside and stuff like that. But I know Danny Ingram, the drummer from Youth Brigade, even though they cut the power, he keeps bounding on the drums for quite a while until he was, I think, forcibly removed from it. But
It
that's what
sounds like
shows were like back then.
yeah, it sounds like one of those epic early hall shows that were going on, and people were like, "What the fuck is hardcore? What is punk rock?"
Yeah, it confused people.
Well, after that came Artificial Peace, which is, probably along with GI and what you're doing now, then probably the most famous. They're actually very famous in DC from what people tell me. And that was with Mike Manos, and you mentioned Steve Polcari and Pete Murray. Where did he come from?
Okay, he was in a band called Red Sea, and this was at the time. Okay, we were just graduating high school. It was the end. Actually, it was towards the end of the summer after we graduated high school. And Brian was going to go to Chicago to go to art school. So it's like, okay, we need a new guitar player. And we tried a couple different guys and wasn't really working out. And then we heard that Red Sea, which is another band that's on Flex Your Head, was about to call quits. So we tried Pete. We called him up and asked if he was interested. So he came down to Mike's basement, and Brian was still there. So he showed him some of our old songs and played them, and it just felt really good. And I think Red Sea had one show left that they were going to play like at Janelle's basement, like at a private party. And that was also our first show as Artificial Peace. So he played 2 shows that night. And
Was
that's
there
where
actually a club called Janelle's Basement, or
no,
was it
no,
some girl named Janelle?
there's a girl named Janelle. She had a
I knew you were
basement in
going
her
to say
parents'
that.
house. So that's Janelle's basement.
I knew you were going to say
Janelle
that.
Brooks.
Um, of course, I got all this stuff from your bio. You probably figured that out. Ian Mackay produced Artificial Peace, and the complete sessions came out in 1981.
No, no,
Correct?
no. We recorded it in
You,
81.
it came out years later. I'm sorry,
Oh, it
but
came out in 2000,
yeah.
2010. And I didn't even know they were going to do it. One day I get I think a call or an email or a package shows up, and here's a bunch of records. I had no idea they were planning on doing that.
Yeah, I was talking to Tom Lyle about you, and I'm going to get into some of the things he told me, because he said you really had to endure something very difficult on that tour. But he was like, "You got to talk to him about, Artificial Peace, man. That's the real story there." And I know that you guys had opened for Bad Brains and Black Flag. That sounds pretty awesome, man. What was that like?
Okay, well, I'll start with Bad Brains. Okay, at that time I was now going to University of Maryland, living in the dorm. I had
The Terrapins?
yeah, yeah, the Terrapins. Go Terps. So I had given HR the phone number of like the payphone on our floor in my dorm. And one day the phone rings, and people tell me, like, "Rob, there's a call." So I go, and it's HR. It's calling from New York.
Wow.
And he said, "Hey, we're doing a show at the Peppermint Lounge. We want you to come up and open." He gives me the date. It's a Saturday. And I'm like, "Okay, great, perfect." So we drive up. We get there. We start unloading, and we discover the Fleshtones are playing that night. HR gave me the wrong day. We're playing the next day on a Sunday. So
you didn't do a garage rock set with the Fleshtones?
no, it didn't work. It didn't go that way. So we were staying at Alan Abbey's, this couple out in Levittown, who would put up a lot of DC bands when they'd come into town. So
Long Island.
yes, we hang out with them, go to their place, listen to music, and the next day we go back, and okay, we do the show, but I don't know what the deal was. There's some on the internet. There's some tapes floating around of our set that night, and it's
Really?
awful. Yeah, it's really bad. The sound guy for that night, and I don't know who set, whether it was worked for the club or he worked for the Bad Brains, but he was one of those guys where I'm going to screw the opening act. And we had nothing in our monitors. We could not hear anything at all of each other. And we were just like completely, we would finish, I'd finish the song and, Mike is still going and feet's still going. And it's like, no. It's like, because we just totally are off time.
They screwed
And
you.
it just sounded horrible.
They
It was not
fucking
a
screwed you, man. Wow.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Yeah, it does. What about Black Flag? Was that in DC or was that in New
That
York
was in
also?
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah, that was at and I don't know how if they've been doing clubs there long or not. It was actually in a furniture store space. So it's like this big open space. You think of a furniture store, but they had problems with the power. And during Black Flag's set, they lost power, I think 3, maybe 4 times in the middle
Was
of
this
their.
Keith Morris or Des Cadena or who was singing?
No, this was Henry singing at
Oh,
this point.
this is the Rollins era.
Yeah, and there was mirror tiles like around the stage, and Henry was so pissed he decided to sort of recreate the damaged album cover, and he pops, puts his fist right into one of those mirror tiles, and of course cuts himself up, and I think he had to go to the ER. There's someone has somewhere like the ER bill, which I think Ian may have paid or something like that at the end of the day. Yeah, that was a show.
So the art of I also hear that the Artificial Peace album comes with a book that has a lot of famous people in it. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, no, that's a different album. Okay, so
it is.
Oh yeah. So the album that Discord released was the same session where we recorded all these songs. Basically the 3 songs that wound up on Flex Your Head, and at least 17 songs, or give or take. That's the complete session that Discord released in 2010. Now, we recorded a show at the Wilson Center in 1982. We did a couple of shows there, but I think it was the June. I don't have the date in front of me. 40 plus years ago, and that's coming out, or actually, it is out now on Alona's Dream Records, which is a label that specializes in releasing, hardcore of that era. So Tom Lyle had recorded through the board.
He records everything.
He recorded, through the board, and he also hung a mic to get something like some ambient sounds. And originally, let's see who, I ended up actually there was a video of that show that Malcolm Riviera, who actually organized the show, he promoted and put it on. I didn't realize this at the time until actually only a few years ago, that he had a video camera and he was shooting, but from like one fixed position, and he would turn the camera on and then he'd turn the camera off, because he had 3/4 inch tape maybe, and he only had so much. So he wanted to try to shoot every band if he could. So he couldn't shoot in everyone's entire set. So finally, and Malcolm had been talking to me about this for ages, about, Tom had recorded the audio, I have some video, so he sunk it up.
Wow.
And it looked great what he had, but he didn't have the entire set.
Is it on YouTube?
You can find it on YouTube now. What I ended up doing is I took the shots, the song, what footage he had that was of the songs. And if he had the full song, I just left it as is. But for songs where he didn't have video, I used still footage.
Nice.
And I also used the same video footage, but I kind of pushed in on it, and I edited it and found places where it looks like Steve, the singer, is in sync, even though he's singing really in the video a different song, but I edited it in such a way that it looks like he's singing live. So I used still footage and did sort of moves on the stills and flyers and other imagery. And I put that up on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. So that's there. So if you sort of Google or go to YouTube and put in Artificial Peace Live Wilson Center, it should show up.
I'm sorry I got the two things mixed up, but the book, as far as the book goes, or the book, it's like a bunch of famous people, right? from
It's
DC?
essays of people who were in the scene back then,
Yeah,
who writing a piece on artificial peace, and then a bunch of Malcolm's photos from either the Wilson Center, HB Woodlawn, other places, and flyers and other ephemera is
that's
put in
cool,
there.
man. Yeah,
That's out.
you were part of, like, there was, to me, the three big scenes, and as far as American hardcore, straight edge, whatever, were DC, Boston, and LA. And you were part of one of those three scenes. And they ended up, all the people in those scenes ended up getting to know each other like really intimately, because that's how the scene was back then. Because I remember going to shows, and it was
Mhm.
like, you knew when the bands were going to be playing at the KFC hall down the road, or I forget the girl's name, the basement show, but
Janelle, yeah.
so you're part of, like, a real important part of history. Let's talk about your time in government issue. I reached out to Tom Lyle, who we mentioned, uh, and he said, this is what he said, quote, "The GI tour Rob was subjected to was grueling, a test of psychological and emotional endurance." Tom has a good way of, like, when I said, "Tom, give me a quote on, how about Rob's time in the band," and that's what he sent me.
He's
And then he
right.
went on and talked about Artificial Peace. He's like, "You got to talk about Artificial Peace. They were like one of the first cool bands," and he complimented you heavily,
Well,
basically.
that's great. Yeah, it was a wild time, and it was just the four of us in John's dad's Buick.
Yeah, that's the thing. They
We're
didn't have a
driving this
van.
Buick with a U-Haul full of gear. And at the time, okay, three of the four band members have driver's licenses. John Stab, of course, never did, which was a good thing. And then Mark Alberstadt, he did have a driver's license, but he's not the best driver, especially when you have like a big boat like a Buick with a U-Haul. So we would let him drive only if it was daytime, easy, straight, not going to have to do any reverse or complicated turns. So you're basically looking at one half of the driving crew of the 1983 GI US tour. It was basically Tom Lyle and I driving it the whole time. And
Wow.
often, I can't remember how many nights, back then, we never stayed in a hotel or a motel ever. There's no money for that. We would either crash at a fan's house, which could be a suburban place, and mom would feed us, and maybe we even do our laundry, or it would be a squat, and it would be pretty miserable. Or we didn't have time, and we would just get in the car after the show and drive to the next town so we could arrive in time to play the next show the following day. So we were doing shows like that and drives like that, and just we just have the cassettes going, keeping music going, keeping us awake,
I'm
coffee.
sure the routing was probably difficult, was not that great either, right? The
Sure,
routing,
the what?
the routing of the tour dates, like they were probably not all close to each other. And
Yeah, I mean, we would often play, one night and then we play the next night. So we would have very little downtime, if any. Maybe we would get a one, if we could we're lucky, we would finish a show, spend the night in that town, and get up the next morning and drive to the next place. So it was that kind of thing.
and because you mentioned earlier Tom and his taping, he's famous. He's taped basically every show. He used you're on a GI album, or
Oh
a
yeah.
live album, because he taped every stinking show. He was a madman. I love the guy, though. He was, by the way, when I ran Giant Records, I worked with a lot of cool bands, and I love them all. Tom was one of the most straightforward and easiest guys for me to deal with, because I worked on two GI records. That U record is one of the
Mhm.
best records ever. It doesn't get the same attention that some of the earlier records gets, but I
No, I
think it's
think
a
you is one of
brilliant.
people's favorites, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Thank you. Tom would be happy to hear that too. Um, but so the live record that you were on, that must
The
have
live
been a pretty,
artificial piece
yeah.
or the live GIs.
Oh no, the live GI record.
There's a couple out, like what version? I think there's like an import version of Joyride that may have some live tracks that I'm on, like a
I
German
think it
pressing.
was the compilation records that came on Doctor Strange,
Strange.
or
Yeah, there's that as well.
Yeah,
There's a couple odd ones in terms of where I'm on vinyl, but if you go to like the GI's Bandcamp Live,
he's got
it,
everything there.
that's there. And like the best show is like the CBGB show, which is I think sometime is it July of 1983, I want to say, or is it June? I forget when we played there. But that's a great show, and that's a great recording. Probably the
So
best.
even though you were in the band for a short period of time, your memory of the band, their memory of you, I didn't get to talk to Stab, unfortunately, because you know he's passed away. But Tom had good things to say about you, and I thought that quote was fantastic. So
Sure.
now let me get this straight. Was it right after that that you took a 30-year hiatus from music?
Yeah, it turns out.
Okay, you got a lot of explaining to do now, Rob. So what happened? You were part of a big scene. You were happening. You were in bands that were getting good gigs, opening for famous bands, and then you all of a sudden just said, "The mic's yours."
Well, I mean, part of it was by 1983, I was kind of feeling it's just the sound is getting repetitive to me. I would just kind of was hardcore as a sound for me was sort of a reaction to hearing bands like Journey and all that on the radio all the time and wanting to do something different and not wanting to play covers where you're trying to sound exactly like the band it's the original. That to me was why we put out hardcore music. And after several years of it, it just felt like, what are people, it's like I don't see the same kind of reaction to it. It's like people going straight, and it's the first thing they play, and they're not really reacting to anything because they straight out the door could listen to, whether it's Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Germs, all that stuff existed before they even started playing. So they didn't have that kind of, we're sick of hearing Journey on the radio wherever we go. We want to do something ourselves. So I couldn't really connect in a way with what was happening because it just felt, I didn't feel like we were on the same plane. And the other part is, okay, we're barely breaking even if we go out on tour. How long can I keep doing this? And at that point, I was going to University of Maryland. I was basically taking my kind of the classes you have to take, the
Liberal arts
liberal arts stuff
courses,
that
yeah.
all that required stuff. And I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do, and I had applied to transfer to a couple of different schools, and BU was one of them. And I found out after I got back from GIs from that tour that I got accepted. So I was like, well, I think I'm going to go to BU and see what happens.
What was your major at Boston
I
University?
was in their film and TV department.
Wow, cool.
And I was just totally focused on that. And there were shows going. I think I went to a couple of shows at the Rat when I got there, because I'm living my first year. I was living in Miles Standish Hall, which is right off Kenmore Square practically.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing Girls' School at what was the theater, the Paradise.
Oh wow, girls' school. Cool,
That must have
man.
been 83 or really early 84. And that was an amazing show. That was great. But I was just really focusing on, okay, film and TV production and my studies and learning this craft. And I just kind of felt, I'm not going to play music anymore, kind of done with it. So I stopped playing, obviously.
Did you not even bring a guitar or a bass
No, I
with you?
actually had bass and I actually had it. And I had my bass. And then after BU, I ended up going to New York. I lived in New York for a while, and I actually went to grad school there as well. And still had my bass. And I would once in a blue moon take it out and fool around with it. But I wasn't in a band. I didn't think I would form a band. And I ended up, when I left New York in 91 to go to Los Angeles, at that point I was living in Chelsea and I took my bass over to to Chelsea Music over in the Chelsea Hotel and sold it to them and said, goodbye, I'm done. Now I'm really done. And didn't touch an instrument for, as you said, like more than 30 years. And then in 2016, I picked up a guitar and taught myself some covers, and then went right back into songwriting. I mean, with Artificial Peace, Assault and Battery, I wrote especially the early part of those bands. I wrote pretty much all the songs. Towards the end, Artificial Peace, the other guys started contributing more, which was good because I actually wanted the guys to write. It wasn't good just having one guy writing all the songs.
Right.
And mainly I was doing that because no one else was stepping up early on. And it's like, we need more songs for the set. So I'll do it. So, and I wanted the other guys. And I know Mike wrote some great lyrics, and Steve started writing lyrics towards the end. And anyway, so songwriting was
let me go
thing.
back to New York for a second. How long did you stay in New York for?
I was there from, let's see, 85 to 91.
Did you go to any of those hardcore matinee shows on
No.
Sundays?
I was living literally like it's just right around the corner from CBGB's.
I feel like we were probably at the same show because I was living in New York.
No, but I didn't
that
go.
time.
I
Oh,
didn't
you
go to any of them.
didn't?
No. I was like, again, I was like, by that time, okay, I was kind of hardcore by 1983 I was kind of like, okay, I've got my full of it, my taste of it.
Wow.
I'd seen the Bad Brains, I'd seen Circle Jerk's original lineup, I'd seen DOA with the original lineup, Randy Rampage and so forth.
The only reason I asked that is because I can remember seeing GI at least 3 times at CBGB's on Sunday afternoons, and I thought maybe you might have showed up at one of those shows, but
no,
you
I was
didn't.
stupid. I should have gone.
So how long did you stay in New York for?
I was there from 85 to 91.
91, and then you moved to
Los Angeles.
LA.
Yeah.
What happened out there?
I worked in the film business, mostly doing music videos and some documentaries, spots, some no budget, low budget features, and just kind of getting beaten up in the film business. So.
What aspect? Camera?
Yeah, camera. I was doing camera and lighting.
Nice.
So
it's really ironic. I was living in LA in 91 because I was in New York. We were in the same place more than once. And I think you're in Boston now, right?
Yeah, correct.
So we're in the same place again. Was it around 2016 you said you started to get the itch?
Yeah.
And you started writing, and then what happened?
I recorded just like literally me playing some of my songs like a cappella, electric guitar a cappella.
Wow.
with an iPhone, just setting up one of these and shooting me in my basement at the time, and posted a few of them on Facebook. And a friend of mine, Dwight Reed, sends me a message saying, "Hey, I have a home studio. If you want to record these right, let's come on over." So I took him up on his offer and recorded a bunch of songs, and that turned into this album. We've come back to rock and roll, which it's a first effort. I wasn't really crazy about my vocal performance on it. It was rushed as far as the vocals. We were shooting, in Dwight's, his studio, and it was towards the end of the evening. We get the music tracks down, the basic tracks, and then it's like, okay, let's do vocals. And at that point, Dwight's wife is kind of like, "Are you guys almost done?"
Where was this?
This is in Portland, Oregon.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I'm in Portland now at that point.
Wow. Okay, so, I missed that.
That part. So from Los Angeles, in 2009, we left Los Angeles and moved to Portland. So I would get maybe 1 or 2 takes to do vocals, and I had never sung before lead. I'd done gang vocals on stuff and backup vocals, and I'm actually on the Legless Bull EP, the first GI's record, but uncredited, doing backup vocals, and I did that big moo like in the intro to Cowboy Fashion.
Wow.
But I never really sang lead, and I never even thought about what key I should write a song in or anything like that. So when the vocals were done, I was like, I felt like I just sort of over emoted to make up for my inability to sing, sort of. I don't know. Some people like it. I wasn't happy with it. But after that album came out, I kind of decided, let me work on my vocal skills a bit and try to find a style. I mean, I'll never, be a vocalist like Robin Zander or someone like that. I'd love to, but it's not going to happen. It's not in my register. So I kind of worked on what's a style that fits me. And I also got some of my own gear so I could record my vocals as well as my guitar at home. Um, and then I had the time to not just do one or two takes on a vocal track, but actually spend some time and say, okay, now I feel okay with it, happy with it. So that turned into the new album, which is now out, or it's been out since September of last. Now with more
Skin Tight Skin. How did you come up with the name?
the name. I
That's what
didn't
you
want to
call
just
your band, right?
yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
call it. And it's it's a solo effort, but on every song I have a guest lead
You
guitarist.
do.
And I did that on the first album too, and I did it on the second one. That's and I'll continue going that route. And I have some guest musicians on other songs as well, playing saxophones or keyboards or other things. But
Very ambitious, by the way. When
well,
you look at the
thanks.
list of people that played on the records, it's like, whoa, pulling that together must not have been easy.
It's I call up old friends and friends of friends and say, hey, you want to play on one song? That's the commitment. One song. I'm not asking you to a whole album's worth. And most of the time people say yes when I ask. On the last album, I got Bob Durwood Andrews from
That was
Generation
We've
X.
Come Back to Rock and Roll you're talking
Yeah,
about, right?
I
Yeah.
got Marshall Keith from the Slicky Boys, which is the band that I saw live probably in 1979 or maybe early, like January of 1980 or something, or probably 79. I saw them at this. I had to get snuck into the show because there's no all ages shows back then. So they were playing at the Psychedelic in Bethesda, and I saw the Slicky Boys and a bunch of other bands of that era, and I saw how much fun they were having on stage. And that's really what drove me to say, okay, I'm going to form a band. I want to do this. I want to have the same fun that they're having. So when I did the first album, Marshall was one of the first guys I contacted saying, would you play on a song? Because if it wasn't for Marshall and the Slicky Boys, I probably never would have played in a band or formed a band or written a song, period. So, having him and all these other people on the album was just, to me, that's a victory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With Now with More Rockets, which is a really good record, by the way. It came out in September, as you said. Are you happy with the way things are going with the record so far, now that it's gotten out there to a few people? I know it's just for our listeners, you can get it on Bandcamp.
Yes.
Both records are on Bandcamp.
Correct.
And so you can buy tracks or you can buy CDs, I think, too.
You can get it as CD, or you can get like a digital download version, or if you want a one track at a time, what the heck.
And are you happy with the way things are going with the second record?
It's been getting, Rodney Bingenheimer played it, some
Nice.
songs off it a couple times, and a lot of let's see, who else? Bill Kelly.
I love Bill Kelly, the black hole of rock and roll.
Yeah. There's so much. I mean, a lot of guys all over. Too many to list at this point, and I won't remember them all. And which is,
well, the songs are really good, man. I got to
thanks.
ask you about the one track that's kind of like almost like the House of the Rising Sun. I'm sure people have asked you that before. Was that intentional, or did that just happen to come out that way?
It's the way I write for the most of the time. I just sort of pick up a guitar and play around till I come up across something that sounds good to me, and then work on it from there. And one day I was strumming along and I realized, hey, I'm playing the vocal line to House of the Rising Sun, which is like an old traditional, really.
Right.
It's not, the Animals, they didn't write it.
Right.
But the Animals do that organ thing on it, which I didn't want to go down that route. But I said, I like just the way this sounds. And I said, can I do something with this and create a new song that references House of the Rising Sun, but isn't House of the Rising Sun? And so I wrote the music first, and then as I got into writing lyrics, I kind of sort of segued into a little bit of Johnny Be Good. So I'm pulling phrases from House of the Rising Sun and Johnny Be Good, but then when you were a kid, did you used to like intentionally sing songs wrong as a joke? Yeah. So I would do stuff like that, like in the lyrics, like, what is it, this song and Johnny Be Good, it's like he plays a guitar like ringing the bell or something like that, and I changed it to like he plays it, how did this thing, I turned it to like, he can play guitar on a piece of wood, which is just silly. And that's the part of music I really like. It's like, if you take yourself too serious,
Yeah.
it's like, come on, it's rock and roll, and you have to have fun with it.
It's
So,
really, I to me, it's you cover like it's a real hard. I'd say it's more of a hard rock kind of record, not metal, but pretty guitar rock sounding, far different than your hardcore roots. But it's like in your face, and I like it, man. The record's really good. I'm glad people are playing it. Um, what do you have future plans on what you want to do with the record? I mean, have you got any gigs? I mean, you're gonna play? I mean.
no, and I'm not sure. I mean, the way I have a different guest lead guitarist on every song, if I was to play live, who's in the band, certainly not all of these guys. They're not going to have the time for it, number one, and just it's a challenge.
It's a
So I
true
don't,
solo record,
it
basically.
really is.
Yeah.
And honestly, at this point, the songwriting and recording is what I really enjoy the most. I don't know, maybe it's my experience with a government issue, US tour. and the idea of going out and playing live again. I mean, or showing up at the Peppermint Lounge because they told you it's going to be on Saturday and you find out it's on Sunday. But I shouldn't hold that as a. But at this point in my life, I like the songwriting, I like the recording. I'm not sure if I really want to get back. And this, even before COVID happened, I wasn't really, thinking, do I want to form, a full-time or even part-time band and go out play live? It's a big commitment. It's like being married to 4 at least different people.
Oh yeah.
And it's not easy.
Do you live like in the city of Boston, or are you on
Okay,
the?
well, right now in this background, we're in a temporary apartment here in the Seaport section.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're actually not going to be here much longer. We got a place just north of Boston, about 30 minutes,
North
up.
Shore.
So not the North Shore, but just up a ways, a little bit out of town. And so we'll be moving in there next month. So this is
I
just a
call
temporary
everything
place.
north of Boston the North Shore, by the way.
Oh,
To
I
me,
don't know. Okay.
Danvers is the North Shore. But yeah, I mean, I love anything north of Boston. To me, is the best place to live in terms of Massachusetts, anyways.
Yeah,
Unless you can live on Martha's Vineyard or the Cape.
yeah, sure.
But well, that's good, man. Well, I'm glad that we got to talk. I do want to ask you one other question because I like to
Yeah.
ask people. Listen, what are you listening to these days? Do you listen to a lot of music? Is there anything that's sticking out, and how do
Um,
you listen? Do you
I
listen to platforms or vinyl or?
well, at the moment, because like 99% of all my stuff, including my guitars and amps and gear and music, is in storage until we move into this place. I've only really had the internet and to listen to, but I listen to. I'm a big Bandcamp proponent. I mean,
Mhm.
that's where I distribute and sell my music through, and I find bands there, and I support them as well. So when I spend money on music, I spend it through Bandcamp.
Me too. I like
Um,
Bandcamp. Yeah.
that's the way for me to go. I don't put my stuff on Spotify. I know some of my like Artificial Peace stuff I think is on Spotify, but I think Discord put that out there. I didn't. Um, so like Sal Baglio, who obviously Amplifier Heads, and Sal plays. He's one of the musicians who plays on the new album.
Yeah,
Um,
Sal brought you up to me, and then when I figured out who you were, I was like, "What?" Because I was like, "That's Rob Moss that was in from DC," and I was like, "Wow!" It kind of caught me off guard a little bit, but it's
yeah,
cool that
yeah.
Sal
But
brought you up.
Sal is a fantastic guy, total stand-up dude, and uh, people like him are the people that I listen to. I like his buddy Dan with
Dan
Watts.
Kopko, yeah.
Watts. I think that album it's up there.
Your
It's like a
music totally fits in with Watts.
Yeah,
your
I mean,
new
to me,
stuff?
I mean, my with this one and what the sound I kind of go for, it's I'm not recreating it authentically, but I mean, it's authentic to me, but I mean, but it's not like, bands like the Chesterfield Kings would play
Right,
stuff and it
right.
sounds like 1966. I'm not doing that, but I'm trying to go for sort of a proto-punk, late 70s glam influence sound, which is the kind of music that got me wanting to play music in the first place. So I go back there when I think of music, when I write music, when I play music. That's the sound that means something to me. So that's where I go. So that's the kind of stuff I listen
You've
to.
totally accomplished what you tried to do.
Well, thank you. I
And I
appreciate it.
appreciate it. Thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to me, man.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it, Steve.
All right. Good luck, man.
Thanks. So long.